Rock Hudson was an iconic leading man in Hollywood's golden age, a major heartthrob who starred alongside screen legends like Elizabeth Taylor, Julie Andrews and, of course, Doris Day. Behind closed doors, though, he lived a double life, as shown in a brand new documentary coming out this month. Well, joining me now is best-selling author and a friend of Rock Hudson for over 10 years, Armistead Maupin, who stars in that new documentary. Fascinating documentary, isn't it?
I liked it very much.
I'm so glad.
Because, you know, we've waited years for, you know, this full story to be told. So it was a relief in a way.
Yeah, definitely. It's a story
to see the man as a human being.
Exactly. Because Hollywood, of course, gives him this image, you know, the heartthrob, the golden boy, doing all of this. And, of course, he wasn't like that at all. He was in the closet for so long, he couldn't be himself.
No, he couldn't. They'd constructed a world in which he couldn't be himself.
Yeah, I don't know how you... mentally, I don't know what that would do to you. It must be very difficult. But he did manage to have... I don't think you'd be able to do it now, but he did manage back then to have a private life, to have relationships with other men, to have, you know, to have love affairs and all of that. He was able to do that.
Yes, he was. He...
Yeah, he was, you know, he was able to have two lives. Almost. Yeah.
It had to be juggled very carefully.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. He must have trusted all of you.
You know, he had to have a fake marriage.
He did. Did he not marry his agent's secretary?
His agent's lesbian secretary.
Fine. Okay.
Who denied it all when she said, "Oh, I had no idea about him." She was terrible.
I know, because everybody knew. It was one of those secrets that everybody knew.
Yeah.
Apart from the people, you know, paying their money and going to the cinema, they didn't know. They didn't know at all. And what was he like? I mean, was he... Because he comes across in this documentary as a really lovely fella.
He was a lovely fella.
Yeah.
He was obsessed with finding me a lover, which is what we called a husband back in those days.
Yeah.
And he knew that I was single and looking. And so when he heard that I was going on the Pacific Princess, the love boat, as it was known back then, to Mexico with a guy I'd just met, he insisted on meeting me at the dock in San Pedro. And I was standing up on the rail, and there was a woman standing next to me. And when she saw this big, tall drink of water who was waving at me from the dock, she almost lost it. You know, it was kind of wonderful. I felt so proud at that moment. Such
a handsome fella.
Yeah.
Which, when you saw him in later life, you know, when he was sick, when he had AIDS, you really could tell he was not well at all. I remember watching him in Dynasty, and I just thought, he's really, really sick. But nobody back then, we didn't know that was what was wrong with him.
Yeah, they didn't. I didn't, because I had not been up to be part of that world for a while. And I assumed it was you know, just people gossiping. You know?
But he was... And, of course, up until the very, very end, we didn't know. And then, of course, it did come out. And it changed things, didn't it? I mean, you know, him being diagnosed with this horrific disease, very misunderstood disease, that changed things all of a sudden.
It did. And I was a part of that, and I'm proud that I was a part of it. A reporter at the Chronicle came to me, at the San Francisco Chronicle, and knew the story and asked me if I would talk about it. And I said, I think it's time, you know. It's going to be a tabloid fodder in about 10 seconds. And so I did an interview in which I said he was a lovely man. His friends all loved him. The industry all knew.
Yeah.
It was no dark secret. It was just who he was, and they knew it.
Yeah.
And so that opened a fuller discussion of what was going on.
It did. I mean, of course, as we know, there were some lurid headlines, as you would expect. But then there actually was an intelligent debate about this disease. You know, so all of a sudden it was out there. People were talking about it. You got the likes of Elizabeth Taylor raising money, and the AIDS Foundation. We know how the work that Elton John does. We're going to talk about that later. The work that he does, and suddenly people suddenly thought, do you know what could happen to someone like that? Actually, this disease, you know, we need
Anybody.
to... Exactly. And we need to talk about it, and we need to fight it, and we need to make sure we get a cure, and we look out for people. But you were a trailblazer, because back then, people were in the closet. They still are, let's be honest. But back then, people were. But you weren't. You put your head above the parapet.
I think that's what attracted rock to me.
Yeah?
I've always been
because you were so open.
Yeah, I think it was my openness. And he knew that, I was an activist in San Francisco. And I traveled with my boyfriends whenever I came to town, my boyfriend. And so he knew all that, and I think it kind of intrigued him.
Yeah, well, he must have looked at you and actually probably thought, I wish I could be like that.
Well,
I wish I was able.
He tried, he really did try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just wished he could have lived the life that he's supposed to live.
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult for people now, and probably even young gay men and women, to remind themselves. I think watching this documentary, it will remind themselves of what it was like back then, because it was hard for people like you.
It
was
for me.
Really, really tough. You had to be incredibly brave to stand up there and say, "This is me. This is how I'm going to live my life."
Well, I was having a good time, Lorraine.
And Rock Hudson had a good time as well.
And he had a good time as well.
He did have a good time. It's a really eye-opener. And it shows the Hollywood system and how it can really sometimes trap people. And although he had an amazing career, an extraordinary career, he really did. But it's just a shame that he wasn't allowed to be who he was.
Yes,
that's all.
It was.
But this, I think, sets the record straight. Do you think it does him proud?
Yes, I think it does.
Good.
I think it shows his humor, among other things, which I was happy about. And
yeah, it's good. Thank you so much for coming in. Anybody that's interested in Hollywood, I know our Jack will love this. Rock Hudson, All That Heaven Allowed. It's on from the 23rd of October. You can stream it on all of these services. You know how to do it, I'm sure.